Imagine standing in a massive crowd. Thousands of people, all tired, hungry, and far from home. The sun's setting and there's no food in sight. But then, a man takes a small boy's lunch, just 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, blesses it, and somehow, miraculously, it multiplies. Before you know it, everyone's eating. Not just a bite, not just enough to get by, but more than enough. And when it's over, there are baskets of leftovers. This isn't just a story about food. It's about trust, provision, and what happens when we bring what little we have to God. So today we're diving into one of the most famous miracles in the Bible, Jesus feeding the 5,000. But beyond the miracle itself, what does this story really mean? And how does it apply to us today? Well, let's break it down. To understand the full impact of this event, we need to set the stage. Jesus had been traveling from town to town, teaching, healing the sick, and gathering followers. At this point, his popularity was skyrocketing. People were hearing about his miracles, and they wanted to see him for themselves. So when Jesus and his disciples tried to get away for some rest, it didn't go exactly as planned. They crossed the Sea of Galilee, looking for a quiet place, but thousands of people saw where they were headed and followed them. We're talking about 5,000 men, not counting women and children, so in reality, this crowd was likely closer to 15,000 or even 20,000 people. Jesus could have been frustrated. He was tired. He needed rest. But instead of turning them away, he had compassion on them. He saw their hunger, not just physical hunger, but spiritual hunger. So he did what he always did. He began to teach. Now, after a long day, the disciples start getting a little worried. The sun's going down, people are getting restless, and they're in the middle of nowhere. No food, no marketplaces, no restaurants. So the disciples come to Jesus and say, hey, maybe we should send these people away so they can find food. Seems like a reasonable suggestion, right? But Jesus responds with something totally unexpected. You give them something to eat. At this point, you can almost hear the disciples' internal panic. Excuse me? We don't have that kind of money. Even if we did, where are we going to find enough food for thousands of people in the middle of nowhere? Philip, one of the disciples, even does the math. He says it would take more than half a year's wages to buy enough food for everyone to get just one bite. Basically impossible. But then Andrew speaks up and says, well, there's this boy here. He's got 5 small loaves of bread and 2 fish. Now let's pause for a second. 5 loaves and 2 fish might sound like a decent meal, but this isn't some huge feast. The bread is more like small flatbreads, think pita-sized, and the fish, probably more like sardines. This is the child's lunch, barely enough for one person, let alone thousands. And yet Andrew still brings it to Jesus. This is where the miracle happens. Jesus doesn't scoff at the small offering. He doesn't say, this isn't enough, try again. Instead, he takes what's given to him, looks up to heaven, blesses it, and starts breaking it apart. Then he hands it to the disciples and tells them to start passing it out. And something incredible happens. The food doesn't run out. Imagine being one of the disciples. You start handing out pieces of bread and fish, expecting to run out any second, but every time you reach into the basket, there's still more, and more, and more. Until everyone, thousands of people, is completely full. I mean, not just a snack, not just to hold them over. They ate until they were satisfied. And when it's over, there were 12 baskets of leftovers. 12! That's more food than they started with. This isn't just a miracle of feeding, it's a miracle of abundance. The story of Jesus feeding the 5,000 is one of the most well-known miracles in the Bible. But beyond the amazement of multiplying food, this event teaches us profound spiritual truths about God's provision, our faith, and the nature of Jesus himself. Let's explore the deeper lessons that we can apply to our lives today. Number 1, God's provision is greater than our limitations. When we feel like we don't have enough, God can still provide abundantly. The disciples saw a problem, a massive crowd and no food. Their immediate reaction was, oh, we don't have enough. And honestly, that makes sense from a human perspective. But Jesus doesn't focus on what's missing. He focused on what was available. This is a huge lesson for us. I mean, how often do we feel like we don't have enough? Not enough time, not enough money, not enough talent, not enough strength. But God isn't asking us for what we don't have. He's asking us to trust him with what we do have. Think about it. Jesus could have rained down bread from heaven like in the days of Moses. He instead took what he already had there, a simple meal from a boy, and he used it for a miracle. When you're faced with a challenge, instead of focusing on what's missing, ask yourself, what do I already have that God can use? I mean, it might be small, but in His hands, it can be multiplied. Number 2, small acts of faith can lead to big miracles. Never underestimate the power of small things given to God. The key turning point in this story was a small act of generosity from a young boy. Think about it. This was his lunch. He could have easily said this isn't enough to make a difference, or I need to keep this for myself, but instead, he offered it. And because of that small act of faith, thousands of people were fed. Many times we hesitate to give, serve, or help because we think, what I have won't make a difference. But in God's hands, even small things have great impact. A kind word can change someone's day. A small donation can lead to a big blessing. A little bit of time spent helping someone could be life-changing. Never underestimate what God can do with the little you have. Number 3, Jesus is the true bread of life. This miracle was about more than just food. It was a sign pointing to Jesus Himself. Later in the Gospel of John, after this miracle, Jesus makes a powerful statement. I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty. John 6:35. Jesus didn't just come to fill stomachs, He came to fill souls. The crowd was looking for food, but Jesus wanted them to realize something deeper. He is the true source of life. Physical bread can satisfy our hunger for a moment, but only Jesus can satisfy the deepest hunger of the heart. We all have a kind of hunger in our life, whether it's for purpose, love, security, or fulfillment. And we often try to fill that hunger with things like money, success, relationships, entertainment. But these things can't fully satisfy. Only Jesus, the bread of life, can. If you're feeling empty or restless, maybe it's time to stop chasing temporary things and start seeking the one who can truly fill you. Number 4, trust that God will provide, even when you don't see how. God's provision often comes in unexpected ways. When Jesus told the disciples, you give them something to eat, they were confused. They couldn't see how it was possible. Sometimes we find ourselves in the same situation. We face challenges, bills that need to be paid, difficult situations at work, struggles in relationships, and we wonder, how will this ever work out? But just like in this story, God's provision isn't always something we can predict or understand. The disciples expected to send people away. Jesus provided right where they were. They expected to buy food. Jesus multiplied what was already there. They thought they had too little. Jesus made it more than enough. Trust that God knows your needs and has ways of providing that you can't even imagine. Even when you don't see a solution, God is already at work. Number 5, there's always more than enough in God's kingdom. God doesn't just meet needs. He provides abundantly. At the end of the meal, there wasn't just enough food to go around. There were leftovers, 12 baskets full. This is a pattern we see throughout the Bible. When God provided manna in the wilderness, there was always enough. When Jesus turned water into wine, there was an abundance. When the prodigal son returned home, the father didn't just welcome him. He threw a feast. God is a God of abundance, not scarcity. He doesn't just barely meet our needs, He exceeds them. When we follow God, we don't have to live with a mindset of fear or scarcity. Instead of thinking, I don't have enough, we can trust that God's supply is limitless. Number 6, Jesus invites us to participate in His work. So God could do everything on His own, but He chooses to involve us. Jesus didn't have to use the disciples to distribute the food. He could have made it appear in everyone's hands. But instead, He gave it to the disciples first, and they passed it out. Why? Because He wanted them to be a part of the miracle. God's still working in the world today, and He invites us to be part of His work. He doesn't just reach the lost, He calls us to share the gospel. He doesn't just comfort the hurting, He calls us to be His hands and feet. He doesn't just provide for people, He calls us to be generous. When we step out in faith, we don't just witness miracles, we become a part of them. What's in your hands today? It might seem small, might feel like it's not enough. But in Jesus' hands, it can be multiplied beyond what you ever imagined. So instead of holding on to what little you have, offer it to Him. Because when you do, you might just be part of something incredible. If this lesson spoke to you, let me know in the comments. What's something small you've given to God that He's used in a big way? And remember to like this video, subscribe for more deep Bible insights, and share this with someone who needs encouragement today. See you in the next video.